Hello everyone, I'm Elena
And I'm Trevor.
and we are
Long Relationships.
People often ask us, how do I recognize whether the person I'm dating at the moment, for example, is the right person for me? And there's so many ways that we can invite people to our lives and see whether they're a good match, because we look at values. We look at the things that you want to do together, and there are ways of achieving that. And today we're bringing along someone who can show us how to do this very, very quickly. Hello, Alan. We have Alan Stevens with us.
G'day, how are you today?
We are fantastic.
Yeah, we're great. For those of you who don't know, Alan Stevens is
The celebrity face
the
profiler.
celebrity face profiler, cross between The Mentalist and Dr. Phil. And if you've ever seen the program Lie to Me, then this is the kind of work that Alan does. Perhaps not the detective stuff, but recognizing facial characteristics that reflect on your character. But Alan will explain it a lot better than I can.
Because it's not just the facial, it's so much more than the facial features. Is that right, Alan?
The body language, it's the micro expressions, etc. It's everything included. So the tone of voice, the color of the skin, how that changes, all those non-verbal indicators that tell us about a person's personality and everything about their emotions at the same time.
So, because there is, the features are there, but the way the facial expressions change, that reflects the way they process information, right?
That's it. Well, first of all, people will understand, will be wondering, where do the facial features come into it? Now, we know that if we are emotional, we are emotional beings. So everything we feel is actually displayed outside on our face, in our body language, etc. So, excuse me, if we if we think in a certain way, over and oh, gee, excuse me, just got a frog in the throat.
Right.
Yeah, so if we think in a certain way, we're going to pull the same expressions over and over. So while we're getting an expression that appears on our face, we're going to be working muscles so that we're going to, it's like if you lift weights, you're going to develop the muscles in your biceps, your chest, your shoulders, etc.
That's right.
So
Yeah,
if you think in a certain way over and over, you're going to develop that muscle over and over, and you'll build ridges and crevices on the face. You're looking at those, you know how somebody likes to think and process. And by the way, a lot of the ladies are probably listening to this at the moment thinking, I've got to get rid of these lines. You only get those lines when you smile a great deal, either out in the sun and squinting a lot, or you laugh a lot. Well, as I say, beauty is only skin deep, but that particular trait is beauty that goes all the way to the bone. It shows me that that person really is a happy person to be around. So ladies, if you're mature age, you've got those lines, you're the sort of person I'd like to go and talk to. If I'm in a large group, who do I go and talk to? It's going to be the person with the lines, because I know that person is a happy person. So,
yes, that's very good news for us. Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
And as you can see how the muscles actually will give away your personality. Then from there, the expressions will tell me your emotions. So the facial feature, the actual character. It tells me what you like, how you like to think, and how you like to be treated, but it doesn't what you're processing and what your intent is. But your facial features, facial expressions and your body language, they'll tell me exactly what your emotions are. And if they don't correlate to what I expect to see, I know something's going on. And that's when you can pick up somebody's emotionally upset, they're suicidal, they're depressed, or if they're a con artist.
Okay. And yeah, there is so much work that you do in different areas with this skill. And we wanted to talk about couples because that's a lot of what we do in our work. So how can someone who is dating a new person in their life make a decision whether they're the right person for them?
Well, in the first place, before you even find that partner, if you understand their personality traits, well, first of all, I always say to people, understand yourself first. know your own personality, but also know what it is you like in your life. Now, some people are very expressive. They have what I call dramatic appreciation. They are natural born presenters. But when they're stressed out, they also do stress with the same amount of fervor. So they're very expressive outwardly. And if there's somebody who is more aesthetic appreciation about how it feels inside, all of a sudden, the person who's being a drama queen to the one who is more about the internal feelings. And if you've got a partnership like that, it may have been that the dramatic appreciation drew the other person, drew you to that person, but over a period of time, when they're stressed and they're up all the time and they always want to know what's going on in your life, you know, you've gone quiet, what's happening, that causes stress. So if you know the other person, know yourself first, know how to read the other person, and then know how to talk to them. And this is into later life when you've got couples who have been together for a period of time, you know how it starts to get a bit tedious or it's no longer exciting. Well, if you know how to talk to the partner, you can bring that back again very quickly. So I can teach people who are completely different personalities how to get on really well. And I can show people who are very similar in personalities how to keep the relationship going strong as well. So it's the more we know about how to read someone, the more we can actually have longer and better relationships with them, regardless of who they are.
Okay, so Jude has just asked us a question. Do you agree that we can train ourselves to receive from our subconscious mind its readout on the facial cues not normally seen consciously? Like,
That's right.
he's talking about connecting deeper with our intuition.
That's exactly right. Well, think about it. How many times have you spoken to somebody or heard them talking? Everything sounded fine, but you went, nah, something's wrong here. Everybody reads people. We all had this skill as a young child. We're very good at it. Think about a young child who pushes their parent to the edge but doesn't push them over. They know exactly how to read you. So as a young child, we do it really well. But as we get older, we start to get involved in everything else. So it's like a muscle that we don't work, it atrophies. What you're actually doing is your unconscious mind is you've picked up the non-verbal indicators, you've picked up those little twitches in the face, the change in the tone of the voice, the things that didn't quite match what they were saying. So when the words and that feeling doesn't correlate, you just don't trust the other person. But you need to know whether it is, okay, that person looks like somebody who did the wrong thing by me in the past, so I'm not going to trust them, so I stand back. They then pick that up because they're also picking up the non-verbal indicators and they go, oh, I can't trust you. So they pull back and we go, hey, we create, we were right. We can't trust them. But really what we've done is we have created a self-fulfilling prophecy. We didn't trust them. We react that way back to them and then they pull away from us. Therefore, we were right. So when we look at the facial features, we're looking at the way the person processes and likes to be as treated, not what they're actually thinking about. So every time we look at somebody, with two people one person who's done the wrong thing by us in the past, another person we've just met, they look very similar, but we can treat them completely different because we know that this is how they like to think and process, make the communication, watch the verbal indicators, non-verbal indicators that come back, like the expressions, the body language, and we know very quickly whether they are the same as a person who did the wrong thing by us in the past or whether they're completely different. As they say, don't judge the book by the cover. That's why when I read something, I always test everything. As I'm talking to you, the feedback you give me tells me whether I've got it right or not. And I can do that very quickly.
So there is many levels. It's not just one level.
That's
of
it.
Reading.
It's a number of skills that have come together and it works quite effectively. Because I can look at both of you and I can see a lot of similarities. And I might keep those little secrets until we have the luncheon, Sunday week down there in Sydney.
Yeah.
And I'll disclose a few of those at the time. So if people are listening to this, they better get along to it.
Thank you. It will be interesting. And it's only good stuff, yeah?
Oh, always. It's always good stuff. Well, even the negative stuff, if you understand it, you can turn it into a positive straight away. So you know that, as I mentioned, when you've got traits that are completely different to each other in two people, they can be quite exciting, but at the same time, over a period of time, they give a bit of stress. But if you know that's the way that person, like if I, for instance, a person who has dramatic appreciation, both you and like me, we're aesthetic appreciation, how it feels inside. So somebody who comes and asks us a lot of questions, goes, what's going on, what's going on? We just pull back into our cave. It's like, leave me alone. I've got a problem here. I want to fix it. But the dramatic appreciation person needs to know what's going on. So they'll keep asking questions. I teach that person to just ask the aesthetic appreciation. I can see that you're busy with something. You've got your mind really on it. Is it anything to do with me? No, it's not. Is there anything I can help you with? No, there isn't. I need to fix this myself. Okay, I'll leave you alone. Come and talk to me when you're ready. Because that person now knows the aesthetic appreciation needs to work it out for themselves. Once you understand that, it takes that stress away. So, and that's how I teach people. Understand yourself, understand the other person, and speak to their traits. And because you know what their personality traits are, you know what you expect to get back. And if that's on target, everything's fine.
Now I know more about it. Yes, absolutely. Now I know how we, gives me ideas. And actually, what this helps with is not just new couples, but couples who've been together for years and years, right? It's never too late to learn more about your partner.
How many people after 16, 20, 30 years get divorced? And that's because they've just grown apart from each other because all they're seeing is the downside of every trait. Because every trait's got an upside and every trait's got a downside. You can't have an up without a down. But if you understand how the traits work and you talk to your partner, you minimize the effect of the downside and you enrich the upside of the traits. And even couples who've been married for a long period of time who are pulling apart, once I've sit down with them and talk to them about their traits and get them to understand each other and start to talk to each other in that way, straight away, it's like being dating again. They're back to that stage of going, okay, they've rekindled and revived the passion they've got between them.
And that's magic. Do you see like a light bulb in them when you explain certain things, like the way I just realized how Trevor needs to process his information and his problems? Leave him alone, kind of thing.
Well, when you're looking at and you're talking to somebody, the whole thing is we've got about 7 expressions which are universal. And micro expression is as fast as 1/5 of a second down to 1/25 of a second. When something is said around you, or the light bulb goes on, unconscious mind reacts, the expression is given, then the conscious mind tries to shut it off and hide it. Well, too late, I've already seen it. So when you're talking to somebody, that little sparkle in the eyes, a little quick change in the expression, a little bit more energy, or the corner of the mouth goes up, great, this person's happy. They've actually, now I've got an answer. And you go, okay, I've clicked on that. Then I talk a bit more about that. And I take it a bit further. And I just watch the face just turn into not a micro expression of a smile, but a really set smile on the face, a permanent one.
And at the same time,
it's all brought together.
At the same time, you do listen to words. At the same time, you do listen to words, but you already know the information comes through.
That's it. Yeah. So if I walk up to somebody, we meet somebody for the first time, how much space do they need? Well, you've got to them. So as you're walking towards them, you know how much space they need, you give them that space. And then they will actually, where they stand, if you stop just before they get to you, they set up their space and I go, yep, got that one right. And I can look at each of the traits, depending on what is happening in that moment, and all of that will give me so much more information.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. Now, I've got a question for you, Alan. Something I'd like you to explain to parents. As I read some very disturbing news this week that kids are spending so much time on computers and screens instead of playing with other kids that they're no longer able to recognize those 7 basic facial expressions that you were just talking about.
The emotions, yeah.
So, firstly, what are the downsides of that for them growing up? And secondly, what can parents do about it with their kids?
Yeah, well, with the downside of into the future is, well, they're not going to be able to make those connections. They're not going to be able to get the feedback that they need when they talk to somebody because they've isolated themselves from it. A lot of the stuff they're doing on the screens, it's not an interaction on the screen. They're playing games where you've got graphics looking back at you. You haven't got real people. Yeah. So they'll actually start to find it very difficult to pick things up. Their unconscious mind will still pick it up, but they'll have no conscious understanding of what it is. And that's going to affect very much their ability to be able to connect. We've also got this political correctness that we've put in place that isolates us from finding solutions. We try and stop the people feeling upset, stop the problems, but we're not dealing with the cause beyond it. And so that's going to add to it as well. We're going to have these kids that grow up that can't communicate. They'll isolate themselves. They'll all be, once we had, open spaces where people would work together. Now everybody wants their own closed office where they can keep people out. And we're a social being. So what we're actually doing is putting ourselves in the jail and affecting our own futures, our own happiness. So we really need to get the kids out there interacting. Yeah, there are some things that they can do on the computers where they can talk to each other because, well, look at what we're doing at the moment. You're in Sydney, I'm in Newcastle. Yesterday I was talking to somebody in Perth. At the same time I was talking to somebody in Zurich. Then later on I was talking to somebody in California. So we're able to connect. Now when we have a good internet connection, I can see your expressions and I can see the enjoyment on your face. I can see whether I'm connecting with you. And I'm practicing this the same as if you were in the room. But it gives me, over the internet, much more people I can connect to. But the trouble is the kids aren't doing that. They're actually playing on their phones. And in fact, I've seen kids sitting in the playground together on their phones, texting each other, and they're only 3 or 4 feet away from each other. Because they're so used to everything's got to be done by the keyboard. So that's a problem we're going to have. But parents, it's getting the kids to be interactive. It's putting boundaries in place as well. Steve Jobs, for instance, he designed, the iPhones, the iPads and all that. His children spent no more than 20 minutes a day on theirs. That's all he'd allow them to use. So he knew that, and it's getting kids, they may not like it at first, but you're the parent, you put the boundaries in place and you bring, if you've been spending a lot of time in their room, they were talking on the news the other day about kids that have been, 2 years in their bedrooms. They're not even going to school. I don't know how this happens. Parents have really got to take their role as a parent. So we're too worried about, we have our children, we've got all these expenses, so both parties are working, we're out there doing everything, we're coming home, and by the time we come home, we're exhausted. Well, you've got to ask yourself, why are you doing it in the first place? It was for the family, but now you're not spending time with the family. You have to have some of that downtime with the kids. You've got to be able to sit to them and have some real conversations with them. Ask them about their experiences and get them to say, okay, the cause of that. Have some hypothetical conversations with them where the child gives an answer and then you take them to the next level and go, okay, if that's the case, then what about this? And help them to get into conversations, but also you're teaching them how to think at the same time as well. It's interacting with your children. Yeah. It's not that hard.
It's being a parent, right?
That's it. Well, I raised 3 boys on my own. They were 4, 11 and 12 when I started. I was a director of 2 companies and I'm a single father. I still had time for my boys. Well, you have to do it. Yep. Because if you don't have that time with your kids, the end result is you're going to have a lot more problems later on. Because now you've got problems with kids getting into trouble. You've got principals on your back. You've got the police on your back. They're getting into drugs and alcohol. You're disconnected from them. So, why'd you have the children in the first place? Because you wanted to have children.
And their lives are ruined for the rest of the lives, and then the next generation, because they won't know how to talk to them. Oh gosh, it's such a long conversation, and we have some more questions from Judah, but probably we can ask them. We can answer them after
in the comments.
After our. Thank you so much for your time. Did you have another question?
No, that's all.
You're welcome. Yeah, well, if people have got more questions as well, good place to ask them will be at the luncheon we're going to do in on the 30th. So they should get along to that, shouldn't they?
Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely. 30th of September, I'll put down the details.
Hey, never miss a moment to do an ad.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we're so proud and privileged to have you come down to Sydney for that.
And looking forward to meeting you in person.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you
Excellent.
so much.
Look forward to it.
I know you have a very busy schedule.
Bye-bye.
Chat soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you for watching.